Yeah, I just thought I'd share with you the thought processes I went through whilst repairing my washing machine. I've got an LG washing machine. It's model number WM14220FD. It's been fantastic. When I embarked on the repair, as I explained in a bit, I thought it was 8 years old or something like that. In fact, we bought it in 2004, and it's been fantastic. We've thrashed the thing, and yeah, so I needed some spares for it, so I thought I'd contact LG, and this is the transcript of the live chat that I had with LG at the time. And I'll just zoom in on that for people that've got smaller screens. But basically, they said, "Hello, can I help?" And I said, "I'm looking for a shock absorber part on my washing machine, WM44220FD." So they went away to find the information. I said, "Thanks very much. The part number is this, but the part has been discontinued." And I didn't actually need these parts. I thought since I was refurbing the machine because the bearings had gone, I would change a few other parts, the things that might wear out. But when I took them out, they were actually fine. But it just highlights this conversation. And it says, "Is there a replacement, an equivalent please? Sorry, I checked, there are no compatible parts of this. So I have to throw the washer away." I asked the question. So I have to throw the washer away. If you search the part number online, you may find it being sold elsewhere. Alright, okay, so not OEM parts, probably rubbish equivalents, I expect, that aren't going to last as long as the 14 years that this one's been in service. I'd say again, there was nothing wrong with them. And then I said, "Well, sorry, that's not good. The machine is perfectly operational, it just needs a small spare part to allow me to use it and save taking it to the municipal tip." So I said, yeah, basically it's a very, very good machine, very well engineered, and it's working perfectly, apart from I need a few little, routine spares to change to make it work. And they said, "I'm sorry, this machine was originally manufactured in 2004. Look, 2004, so it's 14 years old, so they're correct. Parts start being discontinued after about 6 years old. 6 years old. So LG had made a machine which lasted 14 years without any maintenance at all, and they discontinue the parts after 6 years. Unfortunate, if not surprising, that parts are no longer available." Well, I'm sorry, they should be available. This is it's a well-made machine with nice parts in it. The valves, the pumps, the motor, everything absolutely fine. The bearings have gone, that's another story which we can see in a minute. But I just thought I'd call them out because clearly they don't expect their machines to last 6 years. And I wonder now that the quality of machines that LG used to make, which they forged their reputation with, I wonder if the new ones are even going to last that long. And given the amount of electronics and complexity in the new ones, I think I am much better off with an older machine which is better made, and just swapping out a few bits. 14 years, don't forget, and it still looks good, it still sounds good, and I've taken it apart recently, and it's very nice inside. Imagine all that, all the oil that's got to be dug out and crushed, and all the wire and the oil used into the insulation and the plastics, and all the plastics and the moulding and the paint and the coatings, and all the pollution that's been created by making a replacement machine for me to use in my kitchen that probably won't last that long. This machine will probably still be going after the new one, if I bought a new one, has clapped out. All for the want of a small part. So this video deals with the bearings and changing the bearings, but it's the storming machine, the machine we've got, and so I'm just going to change the bearings as I'll show you in a moment, and spend 15 quid on it and give it a new lease of life and put it back, clean it and clean all the drum out and everything else and just put it back together. So yeah, not good. On the environmental point of view, not good. LG make fantastic products. Why don't you support them? Why don't you charge us a bit to support them rather than just make another one and take that one to the tip and then it thrown away and all the different environmental costs associated with that? Not good. Yeah, one other thing I forgot to mention was that I didn't buy it from a washing machine supplier because they were selling the SZT Chinese bearings, and So I went to the local bearing supplier. Every sort of semi-industrial town has got somewhere that supplies bearings, or they're online, and I got an NSK bearing, which is made in Poland, which is much better quality. And you can see every bearing has a code on it, which this one's a 6206ZZ, so 62OD. This one, the one in there, is 6306DDU-C3. So if you get a bearing with the C3 suffix, it's much tighter toleranced. So it's just a better quality bearing. When they finish making them, if they're a bit slap and loose and they've got play in them, they don't get the C3 rating. But for an extra 60p or 70p or £1, you can get the C3. And you might as well put the decent one in. So get the C3. And the one I put in was the version of this, 6306Z, but I got the RS, and instead of this steel plate they've got a rubber seal on both sides to stop ingress of moisture and water. So as well as putting a new rubber seal in, I put the 6306Z C3 tighter tolerance -RS with rubber seals. So I put my own rubber seals into the bearing housing as well as a new separate seal, so it can't do any harm. The bearing, the loading and everything, it's the same. It's just got the rubber seals on to stop the ingress of moisture. So that's what I did. So just a quick note on which bearings to buy. So it's better to buy the bearings from a bearing supplier with quality bearings than cheap Chinese bearings from the washer, the people that supply component parts, equivalent third-party manufactured parts from China, because SZT bearings, for example, I know are not very good because I've used them in my own products. I actually designed products and put cheap Chinese bearings in and then regretted it later. So there's a note on bearings. Buy them from your local bearing supplier if you can, because they're absolutely standard parts and you can get better quality for the same price. This was 10 quid, this bearing, from the local bearing supplier. 2004 LG washing machine has been extremely reliable and very hard worked. It was a very well engineered product, very impressed with it. Direct drive on the back of the drum, 7.5 kilo load, and there was a variety of different ones, slightly different variants, but the inside parts are pretty much all the same. And the model number was WFD 14220. Fantastic machine. Brilliant. It's lasted much longer than any other washing machine we've ever had, apart from the odd thing getting caught up inside, money or hair grips and chains and things. It's been extremely good. But, in the last 3 weeks, it's starting to get noisier and noisier, or more and more noisy. And bearings. On spin, it sounded like a train was going through the kitchen. So I thought I'd repair it. I must admit, when I embarked upon the repair, I thought it was 7 or 8 years old. I'd forgotten that I bought it in 2004. So that shows how well. There's 4 of us living in the house, and a dog, and there's dog beds and pillows and duvets and loads of blankets and picnic blankets, you name it. It gets put through that machine. Very, very good. But anyway, so this is the bearing, this is the front bearing. There's 2 bearings in the drum. There's one towards the front of the drum at the back, and then the one at the shaft, and the shaft runs in these 2 bearings like that. So this is where this hand is the drum, and where this hand is the back, with a nut on the back holding it through the shaft, and they're spaced about that far apart. But they look okay, don't they? But when you turn this one over, you see a different story. And what it is water. There's nothing wrong with this bearing. This is, you can see that, it's made in Korea, and it's almost like the sort of size bearing you'd have on a car, and it's a 6306Z, which is a 63 OD, 63 millimeters, with an 1.25" shaft. Very good, very strong bearing, but this one is absolutely sea solid. And this is the cause of the problem. The cause of the problem is this seal, and it's just wasn't fitted in the housing particularly tightly. It came out very easily, and you can see it's been leaking, and the water's been getting in, and over the years the water's got into the bearing and knackered the bearing. Okay, so I ordered a a set of bearings from the internet, and they arrived, and the front bearing was that big when it came. That's one of them there, and you can see they've reduced the size of the bearing quite a bit. The internal diameter of the shaft is the same, but they've downsized the bearing, so I'm guessing this one, they thought this was over-engineered, and even the newer higher capacity machines have got the smaller bearing. So they put a nice big bearing in which would have lasted, in fact it's lasted 14 years, and the sealers failed, causing it to fail, and they've downsized the bearings to these. And the reason I'm making this video is that I did look on the internet to see how to change the bearings on the machine, and it's pretty straightforward to strip it down, and I also did a video on how to strip it down. But the guys that sell the parts show you just hitting this side of the bearing with a cold chisel or a drift or a steel rod, and it goes bang 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 and just drops out. No problem at all. But I'd say, had I known the trouble I was going to have to get this bearing out of the actual tumbler, the tub housing, I might have thought twice about doing it. So I'd say before you go and buy the bearings to do an LG machine, just consider your own expertise and whether you've got any special tools to get bearings out, because if I hadn't been a car mechanic over the years and had bearing pullers and things like that, it would have been very difficult to get this bearing out without breaking it. So I've just wasted 2 or 3 hours stripping down. So the rest of this video deals with the stripping of the machine and a bit more information, and if you fast forward to the end you'll see the problem I have with the bearing. So you know, I'd like to think I'm a fairly experienced engineer and I've done a lot of big car jobs before, but because the housing for this bearing is steel, and because it's got water, which I think you'll find these bearings don't fail due to wear, they fail because water ingress and corrosion. And the if I hadn't been able to get this bearing out, it would have been a problem. So the rest of the video deals with the disassembly of the machine and a bit more information, and I discussed the problems I had getting this bearing out. But before you don't believe what you see in the people that are selling spares, like how to get the bearing out. Assume that it's going to be somewhat more difficult, and you'll need a mechanicking friend or somebody who can who's used to getting bearings out of housings, because it's a steel housing moulded into the plastic tub unit, and so you can't welt it and hit it really hard very easily without some special tools, because there's no metal to purchase onto underneath to support it, and if you're hitting from above you're driving the power into the plastic housing, it will split and crack. So anyway, without further ado, onto the video. I hope you enjoy it, but yeah, think about whether you can get this bearing out. On the older machines, the 2004, 2005, they got the big bearing, and I suppose it might be easy to get the smaller one out, I don't know, but if it's been there 12 years and it's gone rusty, it's going to be a problem, I should think. You may be lucky, but yeah, before you buy the bearings and wasting money on the parts, then I would also take the bearings out. And the other warning of this was that this seal doesn't seem to be easily obtainable anymore. It's the same size, 62mm. Actually, no, it's bigger than that. It's I know how big it is because I made up an adapter to fit a smaller seal. But yeah, make sure that you get the right size seal, because if you order the parts, they're likely to be the wrong ones when they arrive for the 1422. Alright then, further ado, onto the video. The wife's Splush and douche in the workshop. It's 10 years old probably. It's the, I can't tell them what number, but it's a LGWM, I'll tell you that later. But it's a pretty much standard. They've got different fronts and slightly different arrangements, but they're all very much similar inside. More information if you need it. Anyway, so yeah, over the 10 years, what's it had? It's had, in here, and they are, these plastic jobbies. They snap into place. You just buy them and they clip into place. And you can see there's something inside one of those, but we've had 2 of those break, and they're like £5 or £6 each. We bought them. You see them rattling a bit, and they break off. So it's literally just a case of slotting a new one in, and it locks in place. So 2 of those have broken. And there's a speed sensor on the back, which is a pretty bad design. It's a Hall effect speed sensor on the direct drive motor. I'll show you that in a minute, and I'll show you the modification to stop that failing. Otherwise you'll have to change it every 5 years, and it's a waste of time. It just needs a bit of a mod. If you're electrically minded, or you know someone who is, then you can save yourself the bother of buying that part. It's an intermittent fault, happens occasionally, and it's a drum speed sensor, and it's not got any sort of electrical decoupling on it. So noise, and the magnet gets weak, and then the noise overcomes the actual effect of the switching, and it can't sense any more reliably. So that's that one. So, but this now, if you can, there's no play in the drum, but you can hear that bearing, hopefully. Well, what's it like to be in a washing machine? Ooh, there you go. But yeah, so we've got bearing problems. So it was a case of either buy a new machine. I have to admit, my mouse was hovering over the buy button for a 450 quid replacement. But in the interests of the 10 quid bearing set and seal set, which was about £10, including shipping on eBay, I thought I'd have a go at changing the bearings. So this is what this video is about: changing the bearings and seals, and any other general maintenance things which would give this a new lease of life. Anything that's found along the way, any procedures to do along the way, any tweaks along the way, or whether it's just a case of whip the drum out, whip the bearing in, and whip it back into the wife so she can wash her undies. But anyway, there it is, 10-year-old machine, been pretty reliable, but yeah, bearings have gone, so let's see if we can change them. Cover off this thing. It's just held on with 2 screws, one here and one on the other side. You take the screws out and pull it back and lift it, and it will come off easily. So that's the first thing, take the lid off. And take these screws out of here for the back panel, and remove this back panel. You can see that thing there. It's got to come off. Can't stay. It's got to go. So they say every picture tells a story. There's the back of the machine with the rear cover removed, and look here, we've got a witness of ground up bearing material and water. So what's caused this? Actually, the bearings haven't worn out. Those bearings last a long time. The water has got into the bearings, so that's your problem. There's your problem. And it's been running down there, and just yeah, nothing electrical. There's a piece of plastic there which prevents it getting onto the heater element. That thing there is the back of the heater element, so we're going to have to take those connections off, but we'll deal with that in a minute when we've worked out how the hell this thing comes apart. Now we're looking down the front. There's one screw in there. Can you see it in the middle? We need to take that out to get the front panel off, put the lower front panel off the machine. Yeah, so once that screws out, you just take the panel and just gently pull it forward, pull it, and there it comes off. And you can see the front lower panel is now removed. Now we've got the front lower panel off, you can see underneath the edge of the front panel, there's the door there, look. And then down here, you've got a row of screws along the front holding the front panel onto the machine. So the next thing I'm going to do is remove those 1, 2, not one there, they didn't put one in, and three screws on the front panel. Note that the 3 screws we've just taken out that front panel are threaded, they're not self-tapping. They look like that, so when you come to put them back, make sure you stick them ones back in the hole with the M4 thread on them. Okie dokie, before we take this front panel off here, there's screws up here behind there that are holding this onto the main body. As you're aware, these side panels don't come off, so we need to open the front of the machine to get the drum out, basically. So yeah, there are 2 screws, one here, one there, holding that drawer onto the unit, and whether they actually anchor it to the chassis, we'll find out. So I'll take those out and then I'll let you know what I see. The 2 screws that came out of that panel look like that, long self-tapping screws, cheese pan head. Okay. Behind this front panel here are these 2 lugs, which if you're looking from behind, they're just hooked onto this section here. So you put a screwdriver in like that and you lift it down and pull the front panel. So you're pushing that lug down. When I get it out, I'll show you which lug I mean, and then it just pops forward. So watch this. I've just pushed it down, and then we just pull it forward. You can see this locking lug here locks in under there, and it also engages down on this front edge of this panel. Okay, so then we should be able to unplug it. It's the front of the controller. It's just hanging on the cables at the moment. So we need to unplug all these plugs. This one. Those two. They're all different, so they can't go in the wrong ones. And they've just got these release levers. Look, if you push that lever back like that and then pull, that one's tight, but difficult doing one-handed with the camera, but let's try that one. There we go, so that one comes out. I'll do the rest off camera, but bear in mind this will fall off because at the moment it's just hanging by the cables, which is not a great idea. So when you get down to it, if you can support it or ask someone else to hold it while you unplug them, wouldn't necessarily be a bad idea, but put the front panel to one side once you've removed it. Well, the machine is looking pretty poor. We've got the top panel off and the controllers, and got all the gubbins hanging out. Looks horrific, but those plugs are all different, as I said. Got this, look at that in there. Wife, what are you thinking? She's too tall, that's the problem. If she was shorter, she'd be able to see in that and realise it needed cleaning. But to be fair, I didn't really know until I pulled the drawers out. I mean, the drawer out, not her drawers. And down the bottom, we've got the bottom off now. Pipey thing is just the exhaust pipe or the water pipe. Now, so what we're going to do next is we're going to take out these two screws. See this one here and that one there. And I'll show you what those screws look like in a minute, because if you're putting it back together, it's going to be useful. Okie dokie, well this front bit is located on a number of nylon hooks. Can you see that there? Can you see that? That hooky thing there. That there is a hook that goes into a keyhole in there. So you slide it down and it comes off. But me being a complete novice as far as washing machines are concerned, actually I've done a few in my time, but the old type, the hot points and all those lot, you could change the bearing in the back without taking the drum out, because the bearing mount mounted onto the back of the drum, which was, they failed more often, but they were easy to change. But don't forget, we've got this rubber Johnny in here. Actually, his name's not Johnny, he's just rubber. I've got to take that spring clip off to release the drum scale. So I'm going to work out a way of doing that, and then the whole front should just then come off, apart from this breather pipe or whatever that pipe is there. But we'll, as we say, this is a voyage of discovery, and Jason and the Argonauts didn't worry too much. They just had to get over the next hurdle. So that's what I'm going to do. It's not a biblical struggle, but it could turn into one. So watch this space. So what I've got to do, I've just had it off and I'm going to put it back on again. I just got hold of this piece here with the pliers. And using all my manly man strength, lift it up and forward, and then the seal will come over the front lip and come off. So that's how I've done it. I'll show you in a minute when I've finished, if I've still got all my fingers. So that spring is hoofed upwards over the front of that lip. You can just work it around. I had to use a little screwdriver, well, medium-sized black blade screwdriver, just to prise it forward over this detail here in the rubber. But once you've done that, you can just lift the whole thing off and pull it around. Look, it's coming off, okay? So you work it all the way around. At that point, this front panel will then be free to be removed. So I'm going to do that because I've only got one hand free at the moment. I don't have a handy cameraman, but you can have a look in the side view. You can see pretty much what's going on. I hope that's in focus. I can't tell. Alright, so there you go. So I'm going to work that seal off. There might be an easy way of putting it back on, but we'll work that out when we come to it. Take the front off. We've got to take those two screws out there. That's the hole the door catch goes into. So we've got to remove those two screws before we try and take the front off, and then we'll go about releasing the seal. The top of the drum, or top of the door, there's the door, my finger's poking through the rubber seal. There's this pipe, which I think is supposed to sprinkle water down the front, but ours is actually blocked up with stuff on the outlet nozzle, I've found out. So that hasn't been working for a while. In fact, I'll just pull it. That's what just came out of it. Smells ripe and all. Yeah, so you just unclip this clip from the front panel and then just pull the pipe to remove it. Yeah, there's some cleaning required here, isn't there? I can see that. Off, so you can see front missing, pipes hanging everywhere, general chaos. Allgemeine Verunsicherheit, those who speak German. So yeah, we've got this union under here. Look, you've got this. Oh, can you see that? Can you see that? Oh, bugger, it's flopping all over the place. Sorry about this, but here it is, this thing. Yeah, that's got to come off, and so has that got to come off. And it's going down to basically the exit pump there. And also this makes the recirculation pump. I'm not quite sure how it does it, but it does. So I am actually going to, this is pretty dirty inside, so you can't really see it, but it's smelling a bit high, to be honest. My wife doesn't use biological powder, which doesn't help. So I'm going to remove these 4 screws, unplug this thing and take it out, because I have a feeling that you can see these concrete parts on here, these weight increases there to give the drum much more momentum and stop it leaping about too much. Basically tuning the natural frequency of the drum to a much lower level that can be damped out by these springs and by these shock absorber dampers down here, these things. Okay, so to make it more manageable, I'm going to whip these off, and I'm going to remove this pump by taking these 4 screws out, and then also, as I said, taking this union off here, this rubber part off the base of the drain of the drum. Then if this does drop forward when I'm removing it, because I do have to take the drum out to get the bearings out and to split the drum, you can see the drum is held together along this split line with a rubber seal inside. Now I didn't bother buying a rubber seal, I'm just going to use some RTV gasket on the old seal, which is effective, or it should be. But you know, when this is, you're unhooking these springs and shit's happening, pardon my French, what you don't want to do is to drop it on your pump and then your pump is broken. Okay, so I'm taking that out because I want to give it a damn good clean. So we've got the union at the top, just to recap, this union here to take off where the water goes in, the in-feed. We've got this breather at the side. There's a big rubber breather pipe there on the side. We might have a look at that from above. And is that a breather? Actually, I think that, to correct myself, that's the breather. That's where, when the thing's filling up, the air pressure has to be released, it comes out through there. And that, this hose in here at the bottom of the powder cartridge, bay, dispenser, we want to call it, goes in the side. So that's where the water in-feed to the drum is, through there. So I've got to take that off. So when this is all clear and the drum is all free, I'll recap on those and then I'll show you how we release the drum, if I can work it out myself. No, I should be able to. Don't panic. Etc, etc. Yeah, be warned, these things are steel. Look at that. Yeah, I was expecting to be that high density concrete ballast stuff they use, but these are actually cast iron or steel. But they are weighty. Yeah, I'd say 7 or 8, 9, maybe 9 kilos each or something like that. So when they come off, be careful, because they can almost caught me by surprise. I haven't got my steel toe caps on today neither, so yeah, watch out for that. But well worth repairing. You're taking 20 odd kilos off, nearly 15 kilos off the drum. It's just going to make it much more manageable. It's a pain to take them off, I know, but they come off easy enough, and I think it makes good sense. So that's what I'm doing. Yeah, so we undo this one, undo this one with a 7mm. It doesn't go very tight, but you need to loosen it right off. In fact, there's what appears to be a butterfly nut at this end, but it's quite hard to get to. There we go. Okay, so that's nice and loose now, look. I should be able to just pull this off, like so. Then there's a clip here and a pipe. So there's a thing. I think it's a breather pipe again to remove airlocks, to let airlocks to flow out with some kind of damper inside. I'm not sure, but anyway, in any case, it needs to be removed. So I'm going to squeeze these two together with my pliers and pull that pipe off as well in a moment. Well, look, see, this repair has cost me less than I expected. I found the treasure of the Sierra Madre in here. What have we got in this thing? Look, this is that pipe I showed you. We've got £1 English pound, so that's the repair's gone down to £9. Another English pounds, so the repair price has gone down to £8. These are quite the new ones with the flats on the sides. So they haven't been in there. Oh, that one's been in there longer than that actually. That's an old one, or is it? No, that's got the flats on the side. It looks like it's been tumbling around a bit and got worn, actually. Yeah, so it's £8 at the moment. An E. Where would a metal E come from? Is it magnetic? Yeah, it's a steel E. What heaven's name is that? I don't know. My daughter's name is Esme, so I'm blaming her. Esme, if you're watching this, you ruined the washing machine. Oh, wait a minute. What have we got? We've got... Oh, got a 5p. Yeah, so it's gone down £9, £8, £7.95 for this repair. And that looks like an assembly key from some IKEA furniture. Well, look at how the end is all worn off. I wonder if that's been whizzing around the drum, rubbing on something. Might be, mightn't it? That's a solid piece of steel in there. I don't know what that is. See what else we've got. Anything else? Oh, jewellery. Lovely jubbly. And a screw just fell on the floor, but that wasn't from the washing machine. That's from one of my pockets. Yeah, so bits of jewellery. This is like the raising the Mary Rose. A nail. Oh no, a screw. A screw nail. Yeah, when you've only got a hammer, everything starts to look like a nail. A tack. Oh, a pin. And a lady's pin from the Lady Works. Another screw, evidently from my pocket. Look at that stainless, that one. That looks like a screw from my motorcycle. I recognise that. Wonder where the bloody hell that went. Must have been in my leather turn-ups. And then various other little tiny self-tappers. Look at those. Don't recognise those at all. They're literally about 2.5mm, 2mm stainless, obviously, self-tappers. They come in handy, but God knows where they came from. Another screw. This is from Fisher Fastenings, but you can see the plating's held up. It's steel, but yeah, it survived the washing machine test. Another nail. Oh, that's worrying. Look, ball bearing, although not a very round one. And then various other bits and pieces of detritus. There's another one of those screws. Look, what is going on in this machine? Hats off to the machine. It's been a surprise it's lasted this long. Yeah, there's another one. What would have all those in except my pockets? I don't recognise those. Because you probably gathered by now I'm a bit of a nerd, so I'd have noticed that. Anyway, the wife's expensive jewellery. To phone up the insurance company now and tell them we didn't lose it. It got washed. Yeah. Still, I hope we don't get accused. I'm put this on the thing, but I hope I'm not going to get accused of money laundering. Never mind. Now, after the archaeology, local archaeology as well. I'm just going to whip out these. There should be one screw there that's already gone for some reason. One there and one there. And take this pipe off here, squeeze those two together and hook the pipe off. I can probably show you me doing that with a super one-handed strength. I don't know. Let's try it and see. So, pipe grip is squeezy squeezy. Lift it up like that, so it's pinged off the joint, and then pull it like this. See, so that one's off. And if you are doing this job, a pair of these pipe grips. These are my dad's. I remember using these when I was a lad about 40 years ago. But yeah, chrome vanadium. Made in, God, even back then, made in India. How about that? Anyway, so well done, you Indian chaps. Unplug this wire here. This plug comes apart. Again, you've got the old, push that down to release the cable. Unclip it from there. Then the whole pump body will come off with this pipe. Undo these two tie wraps here and here. Yar and yar, so the pipe's out of the way. I'm going to use this guy to help me put it back together as well. So I'm going to remove the pump, so that's the next job. Around the back again, and there's the drum floating about. It's a bit back heavy now because we took those weights off the front. Might have been better to wait, but haha. Undo this nut and remove the rotor. And once you've removed the rotor, we're just going to unplug these wires here. Just down here, look, there's the wiring loom. So these connections, obviously for the heater, down there we can undo those and put the nuts back on. Actually, they plug on. They should just pull off. They're just the old spade connections. But when you come to put them back, make sure they're tight. But this is the main motor drive and the earth wire we need to remove. So reduce the earth wire by removing that screw and just pop the screw back in the hole temporarily, then you know where to find it. And then unplug this, but first we've got to take this rotor off. So I'll do that now. So we're talking a 17mm socket for this. Just put it on there. I don't know if I can do this holding the camera as well. And just give it a really good whack. Like that. If you use the inertia of the drum to hold it, and then you can undo the nut holding the rotor on. So undo the nut. And when I take the nut off, I can just take this by both hands and ease it back and forth until it comes off. And be careful you don't drop it if it's bent. End of. So there's the direct drive motor. Fantastic system. You can see these magnetic poles. There's a phase shifted electric current going through here, which basically the magnetic poles move around. And then inside there's the splines, by the way, which that goes on to. And there's that bolt on. I'm going to stick that bolt back in there for now, so I know how to find it when I need it. And I don't know whether this is the bearing that's gone or the one on the inside. We'll find out when we got the drum apart. It's probably the inside one closest to the failed water seal, I should think. But word of warning, these bits have got a piece of ferrite material stuck on the top. Don't knock those off. They're there to improve the flux coupling to the rotor. And then inside the rotor you can see these permanent magnets, and they will pick up any screws or bits of detritus. And if you put this back on there with a bit of magnetic metal or ferrous metal or something stuck on, it could cause horrible things. So might be a good idea to stick this in a bag. So what I'm going to do is stick it in a plastic bag until you're ready to put it back. Okay. So this is the plug that goes into these the magnetic stator assembly, and you can see there's got these little barbs on there, and you have to push quite hard on there and then pull it out. It's quite a hard one, sort of rocking it side to side, but just be careful you don't rip the connector off. But yeah, squeezing those, it's plugged in there like that, and you have to get hold of those to squeeze those hooks in, and those hooks retract, as you can see if I squeeze it hard enough, and then pull, and then it comes out. So that's how you do that. Cup of tea. Right, the easiest way to show you how to get these out, these pegs down in there somewhere, can you see them? Can you see that? These are pushed through here to hold the shock absorbers, and the same up the top on the drum. Yeah, so if I pick this up in my handy, you can see that there's a clip, a barb, a catch, what you want to call it, that thing there. So these push through, that pushes out the way, and then it locks. So all I did was, whilst pushing, it's a two-handed job, push that down with a screwdriver, and then handily, there's a little web behind there, you can just lever it forward, and it came out quite easily. So push that down and withdraw that way, obviously, and then put them back. The opposite is just ram them in, and hopefully the catch will re-engage. Don't overforce that catch too far in, otherwise it won't do its job when you put it back. But yeah, that's how you do it anyway. So that's that bit. Cup of tea consumed in my tummy. Right. So the thing now has got a spring on the right side. You can see that spring suspension point there, and then there's behind this at the back. There's another spring suspension point, and then one at the front. Now the front one's not actually doing anything. Look, because the weight is at the back. Now, as I mentioned before, I haven't put that drum back on, so those coils at the back on the direct drive motor are still exposed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to unhook this, which should be easy enough because there's no weight on it. Then I'm going to get a ratchet strap and support the drum to unhook these two, and then I should be able to lift the drum out through the front. So next next operation is to take that spring off, unhook it from there, and then suspend the drum with a ratchet strap, and I'll show you once I've got the strap in place. Swear box is full. So I discovered that this is not as easy as I'd made it out to be, getting that hook out of that hole. This is the front mount, not the two back ones. So I actually thought, well, okay, I'll use my loaf, as my dad used to say, just lay it down on its front. So the front of the drum is resting on the bench on the surface, and so is the washer, and the washer dryer is lying on its front. And then if this spring is not really under tension, then you can just grab hold of it and pull it out. There you go. So that's the method of disconnecting that spring. There you go. So I've got the machine, the drum suspended with the ratchet strap, and you can see it's balanced on the strap, so I can lift it like that with one hand, and the strap goes down around the outside of the machine, under the base, up and under a U underneath the drum. So the drum is supported. Now by tightening that strap up now, I can then release this final hook and the drum will be free. Okay, well they say hindsight is free, and with hindsight, so you have the benefit of my hindsight, it's the easiest thing just to remove this coil and getting it out of the way, because it was, it was okay, but one man job getting it out of there was a little bit hairy, should we say, and I could have, damaged that, and I haven't, but I could have done. So, whip out these bolts, no problem at all, so it just lifts off. So what I did was just put a pencil mark there, or a pen mark there onto the cover, so that I know where it goes back. So yeah, take it off, because it's easily accessible through the back. Just take it off first, is my advice. Okay, so I've got the tub resting on a couple of blocks of wood. The opening of the tub facing upwards, and the next game is going to be to remove all these bolts around the peripheral, these 10mm bolts, using a long extension on a impact driver. Yeah, and there's a rubber seal in between, which you have to gently pry apart. They advise you to fit a new seal, but I'm just going to put some RTV gasket sealer on, because it's a lot cheaper than buying a new seal, and it will do just as good. I'm confident it won't leak, but it's up to you. So remove those nuts and then pry the top of the half of the tub housing off. Yeah, well, it took a bit of pounding actually. So I initially had a piece of wood on top of here, but it just wasn't getting the impact. So I took the bolt that was in there and tightened it down tight on the drum, so that I got a metal to metal impact, and then used a much lighter hammer than the one I was using, which was this one, to get the speed of the impact. And yeah, it dropped through, and of course it can't drop all the way out because the bolts hits the top of the bearing. So that's what I had to do, and you can see it's in a pretty poor state. It needs a very good clean up, but there it is. And there's this alloy bracket apparently which sometimes fails, so I'm going to brush all this crap off here and inspect it to make sure it's okay. Right. So yeah, it's a good eye from the wife. Did you hear that? She's obviously come out for a progress check. There she is. There's the cat. Yeah, apparently I'll get fed when it's finished. So yeah, this seal, we just put that in there and lever, and that's the rubber seal. And what's happened is this rubber seal has failed, and that's caused this. Look at the state of that bearing. Ooh, not nice at all. What's remarkable is it's still going. So this is what's really the root cause of the problem, is the seal failure. So I'll try and get that bearing out of there at the moment. So that's the next step on the job. Not going to be easy, I don't think, but we'll see. In the interests of giving you a realistic view on this, how likely is you can get this out. This bearing, I've been welting it with a chisel from the other side through the hole in the top bearing, and it's not coming out at the moment, so not looking good. So what I want to do now is just try and take the other bearing out so I can get a better access to it, or alternatively use this thing, not that one. This is a bush puller. I've got a set of bush pullers for cars, and it happens to fit in that circle. And if I stand that surface on top of this axle stand, it'll give a much firmer and much more confident way to hit this, because the axle stand will support the bearing housing, and any shot from the hammer will be transferred directly to the bearing, and all the strain will be on the interface between the bearing and the outer bearing housing where it's seized. This is only plastic and it's very springy, and there's very little mass there, so that's what I'm going to try next. Peeps, the bearing is out. Now, I've watched a couple of videos just now because I thought I was going mad. And you see this guy go whack whack with a hammer and the bearing drops out. Well, it struck me that the guys that were selling the bearings and the kits wanted you to believe that that is easy. But this bearing is corroded into this housing here. There's two bearings, one at the front, one at the back. And I started using the whacking with a drift from the other side to push this bearing out this side through the hole in the other bearing. And I tried the other way, and harder with the hammer. Various support options. I even put one of these over the bearing and stood it onto a oak block, and in the end I thought, this isn't engineering, this is just crazy, this is not going to come out with a hammer, and if I do get it out with a hammer, it's likely I'm hitting it so hard that I'm breaking this. So the guys that show you it dropping out on the internet with a couple of whacks, that bearing has been pushed out or pulled out or has been out before, because this one is, you know, typical, and it's about the same condition as the ones I saw in the video, and they don't come out. So if you take anything away from this video, is that you can see this is what I had to do. I had to get my bush pulling kit, which I do got car mechanicking, and this pulling kit goes through the bearing with a nut on the end on one side, and this, and then it pulls it through into the receptacle, and had to use a lot of force on the thread and whack it with a hammer to get it apart. So unless you're fairly mechanically minded, I would expect most people get this far and then get stuck, because it isn't any picnic getting that bearing out. So unless you've got a mechanicking friend to step in and help, you might want to reconsider doing this job, because those bearings are not easy to get out. Okay, so I've been dipping in and out of this repair a couple of times because I've been busy doing other things, and this is the main shaft. This is the drum, obviously. I pressure washed it because it was absolutely, the amount of goo and horrible stuff. I told my wife that she's got to use some biological washing powder and do a hot wash as well once a week to keep this thing clean, because it's just amazing amount of bio slime that builds up on the back of these drums. You know, when you open your washing machine and you get that slightly eggy sort of whiffy smell? Well, I can understand it now, because all the fluff has built up underneath here and caught inside this feature here, and all this was full of fluff, and it's covered in some kind of horrible biofilm. And then we use ordinary soap powder, sort of hypoallergenic pure soap, and I'm thinking you need to use something a bit more with some oomph to shift some of this, and do a hot wash occasionally to clean the machine out. But this is the main shaft, and you can see it's a bit of corrosion here. This is the part where the main bearing, the corroded main bearing at the front bearing, if you should call it that, was locked onto this shaft, and this is where the seal runs on this part. You can see it's actually corroded. I've smoothed it with some emery cloth. I've got some emery cloth tape, and just worked it backwards and forwards and smoothed it down. Also treated the rust with some rust treatment, phosphoric acid gel, basically, to turn it into iron phosphate instead of iron oxide to make a protective layer. But it's a hard steel shaft, and those bearings were locked on here and here pretty good, but this drove through okay by hitting this at the top with a nut on to protect the end of the shaft with a nut tightened down, and I managed to drive the drum out without too much trouble. But the real story started when I put the bearings back in, but there's a metal housing moulded into that drum. This is the bottom half, the back half of the drum. And those bearings, unless you're mechanically minded or you've done work on cars, driving or pressing bearings out, it is not trivial getting those bearings out of there. I'm an experienced mechanic. I've done a lot of car work, and I think it took me a couple of hours to get those bearings out. In fact, I know it did. And they show you, on the people that sell the parts on the internet, they show you going bonk, bonk, bonk with a hammer and the bearing drops out. Well, on this machine, it wasn't like that at all. It was like, shit, if I hit it any harder, I'm going to break the drum. Here's my hammer, look. There's my hammer. It's not a, you know, I'm pretty good with the hammer. You know, when you've only got a hammer, everything starts to look like nails. But, yeah, so not trivial. If you've got a mechanic friend or a garage down the road or somebody who can get you those bearings out if you have trouble, then you could be wasting your time stripping all this down, all this lot down into all these parts, simply because it's not a picnic getting those bearings out. And to give you an example, what I had to do, I had to get my bearing puller kit out with these, you can see these, all these different size shaped cups. This is a priceless thing. So you can find something that fits the outer race diameter or the housing diameter exactly with all these. It's like those things, you know, which one's, where is it? Which one's it under? Swap them round. But yeah, bearing puller kit with these stakes through the middle. And even then I had to tighten this one up about as tight as I can get it, and then welt it with a hammer, and then bang, it went through. So yeah, I think you might be able to get them out. If you are going to strip your machine down and repair it, then do so. But you might need a mechanically minded friend who's good with removing bearings to help you through that stage. They might just drop out like in the films, but I think the machines they're stripping down and showing the demonstrations of probably are quite young, and the bearings haven't had time to fully, that fine sort of powdery corrosion that just holds them carefully, because they're a tight fit in that housing. So yeah, you have been warned. I'm normally advocate everything is easy, straightforward, but it isn't true. Yeah, I got them out, but I'm thinking people I know who do stuff wouldn't have been able to get those out. I don't think it's a challenge. So be prepared to call in for some help if you get to the stage. Just simply supporting the thing on its plastics and hitting it will just break the housing, I think. So I'm going to put the whole thing back together, just put the bearings on, put it back, clean that out over there, and reassemble today. But yeah, if you take anything away from this repair, be prepared to ask for help on the bearings if you can't easily get them out, because that's the sticking point. Well, she's all back together and she's working fine. Gave her a good clean, like a new machine. Yeah, had 2 days of washing going through her, no problems at all, no leaks, nothing at all. So it's great. It was well worth it because it's looking great, working well, and I'm confident it's going to last a lot longer now. So there it is. Hope you enjoyed the video, and good luck with yours if you've got the same problem.